Hello, everybody, and thanks for being on the other side. Okay, today I'm going to start with two questions. The first one is, if you have to write a text, let's say a summary for a teacher and a text message for a friend, what would be the differences between those two texts? Okay, question number two. As you can see, we are going to talk about academic writing today. So, which are the characteristics of academic writing? Can you think of examples? Okay, fantastic. So let's move on. What is academic writing? Here we have a definition, a simple one. It says academic writing is produced in an educational setting or in a context where knowledge is exchanged. Through it, writers, who could be students, professors, researchers, lecturers, demonstrate what they have studied or learned. It's based on reading, on research, on class discussions, and examples of this could be found in essays, abstracts, reports, research papers. Yeah. But what characterizes academic writing? I'm sure that you are thinking about the first question. What is the difference between a text message for a friend and a summary for a teacher? Of course, the way you express your ideas. And we're going to focus on that today. So we're going to see the first characteristic of academic writing. First, is formal. Now, simple. Okay, it's formal. But what does it mean to be formal? You're going to be surprised at some of the aspects that you have to take into account. First of all, there are things that we have to avoid. The first one is using colloquial words. You cannot use words like wanna, gonna in your writing. Get up. Kids is informal. You should use children. Pal is informal. So avoid colloquial words. Also, avoid abbreviations and acronyms. Unless they are well known, don't use them. 3, avoid shortenings of words. For example, instead of writing P, write picture. Instead of writing TV, write television. Instead of writing photo, write photograph. Aha, surprise. Avoid phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs are informal. They are often, always used in speech, oral speech. And oral speech is characterized by being informal. So if you're writing a formal text, like an essay, a report, a summary, don't use them. Use equivalent verbs. The adverb pretty is pretty easy. No, don't use it. That's informal. Okay? Use words like, for example, very. Interjections and exclamations, of course, are typical of informal language, so don't include them in your academic writing. Contractions, I know it could be difficult because we are used to including them in our writings. And when we speak, we use them all the time. Don't, doesn't, isn't, it's, won't. But in academic writing, they mustn't be used. And the symbol ampersand, of course, instead of and, don't use it. Okay, there are other things that we have to take into consideration if we want our texts to be academic and formal. Here we have the tips. First, words ending in ly are more formal. So instead of writing first, write firstly or secondly. for example, in these expressions like in an appropriate way, use the adverb appropriately. Okay, and it also helps with conciseness, which we will see later. It's typical to see in the students' essays to start sentences with also. No. Include also after the subject, okay? Number 3, the use of parentheses and questions should be limited. Yes, questions can be used. Parentheses can be used, but not all along the essay, okay? Strategic ones. The next one is very important. Don't start sentences with or, and, but, or so, because they are informal. Use transition signals that are equivalent in meaning to start sentences. I repeat. For example, instead of using and, you can use furthermore, moreover, in addition, additionally. Instead of using but to start a sentence, you can use on the other hand, nevertheless, in contrast, however. Instead of using so, which expresses a consequence, you can use to start sentences, therefore, as a result, consequently, thus, hence. And finally, be careful with this tip. Whom, which, who, or that should be included even when they can be omitted. If you remember, when we write relative clauses, in some cases we can omit those pronouns, but in academic writing, don't omit them. Always write them. Okay, so this regards formality. Another characteristic of academic writing is objectivity. And how can we reach objectivity in our texts, in our academic texts? Using impersonal language or avoiding expressions that indicate feelings. Okay, so here we have to change the way we see the discourse. And how? If we are writing an essay, for example, we should try to avoid expressions like, in my opinion, I think, I believe. They are not necessary. Don't include the pronoun I. Use, for example, passive voice or use the third person singular, plural. Because that's the way to express the same ideas, but you don't include you as a writer in the discourse. The ideas that you're going to write in your essay are yours. Who is writing the essay? Or who is writing an abstract or the paper? It's you. So you don't need to say, I think, I believe. The reader understands the ideas are yours. Okay? And you don't need to use the pronoun you. It's very common that you use it, like talking to the reader. Avoid it. Finally, regarding this point, we have to avoid expressions like I like, I love, the word terrible. In this kind of discourse, you don't use them. We don't use them. Okay, complexity is another characteristic of academic writing. What does it mean? First of all, I'm going to start with the end. We shouldn't write phrases. We have to write complete sentences. And in those complete sentences, okay, taking into account those complete sentences, we cannot write all the time simple sentences, because when you write a lot of simple sentences, it's like it gives the impression that you are a beginner. So your sentences should be more complex with more subordination clauses that start with which, who, that, coordination of ideas. The noun phrases should be longer, as we have here. For example, if you want, let me think about one, strategically developed plan. So you have an adverb, an adjective that modify a noun. That is expected. And more if you are, for example, in B2 or C1 or C2 levels. Okay, And finally, conciseness is another characteristic of academic writing. That's why we have to avoid including sentences, ideas that don't say anything, that just repeat what you have already written. That's redundancy. Also, if you think about the vocabulary, avoid redundant pairs. Imagine if I said a round circle, you would say, that's obvious, a circle is round. Well, this is a very obvious example, but we use expression like true facts. Okay, facts are true. Or an unexpected surprise. Of course, a surprise is unexpected. Or for example, a free gift. A gift is free. Or redundant categories. How many times have you seen, for example, blue in color? It's obvious. You don't need to say in color. It's blue. That's it. Or in a confused state. Confused is a state. You don't need to write state. Okay, so these are 4 characteristics of academic writing that are important to be kept when you're writing essays, reports, summaries at school or at university. So now I have a challenge for you. 3 questions, and let's see if you can answer them. I'm sure you will. The first one, can you mention 6 aspects to be considered to keep formality in your texts, academic texts? Question number 2, and that's for reflection. Do you use expressions like I think, in my opinion, in your academic assignments? And question number 3, do you think your academic writing could be redundant? Do you tend to include ideas that repeat with what you have already written without adding anything new? Okay, today we finish here, and I would like you to keep on practicing. So, see you soon. Bye-bye.